Go ahead.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Tatiana Calderon. Thank you so much for being here. Apologies that we started a little late. We just had a little bit of technical difficulties. As I said, my name is Tatiana Calderon. I'm the Autism Initiative Coordinator here at Synergia. And now I would like to just offer some instruction for Spanish-speaking audience through Zoom. So hoy siempre brindamos servicios de interpretación simultánea en español en Zoom. So por favor de hacer clic en el fondo de la pantalla, en el globito, donde dice interpretación, y luego haga clic en el idioma que desee escuchar. En este caso, español. So, muchas gracias. So, hoy tenemos la presentación, sorry. Today we have the presentation on profound autism. What is it? Why is this coming up now? And more questions to consider with Dr. Lisa Schulman, developmental and behavioral pediatrician and professor of pediatrics at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and director of autism services and interim director. Just before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. Apologies. Sorry. Right before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping notes. Happy to be switch aside, please. All right, so this presentation is being broadcasted via Facebook Live. You will be receiving a copy of the presentation in a follow-up email, and a recording will be available in a few days on our YouTube page. We will have times for Q&A today at the end of the presentation. For our in-person audience, we ask that you come up to the microphone and please ask your questions to Dr. Schulman, and then we'll move on to any questions in our virtual space. For those joining us via Zoom, we will have a poll activated at the end of the presentation, so please stay put for that. So now on to the next slide, please, Javier. Just a little bit about our Autism Initiative project. So the Autism Initiative project is a project funded by a grant of the New York City Council under its Autism Initiative. This project supplements the work of Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center by bringing increased awareness to New York City residents, particularly to communities with large speaking Spanish populations and growing population of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So these are just a few things through the Autism Initiative that we do here at Synergia. We have our after-school art program in collaboration with Children's Museum of the Arts, or CMA, for children ages between 3 and 13 on the autism spectrum. We also have our integrated transition program in collaboration with the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, for ages 14 to 21. We also have a bi-monthly Spanish speaking support group for parents, as well as workshops and webinars related to autism. So now I will pass it over to Dr. Lisa Schulman, and she'll be presenting today on profound autism. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, so as you heard from Tatiana, we're going to be speaking today about profound autism. You guys are kind of guinea pigs. I've been in the field for 30 plus years, and this term is kind of just coming up over the past year. And so this is my first talk on the subject, and I will say I am still learning about it. And integrating new information as it comes. And I'm going to share what I have so far with you as an audience, and I look forward to your thoughts and feedback as well. Okay, it's traditional to begin a presentation disclosing anything that might represent some sort of bias that the presenter has. So I have no financial relationships of relevance to the information I'm sharing. I do receive funding as an investigator into a study on the genetics of autism, but we won't be touching on that today. In general, I would like to share that I'm a clinician with 32 years of experience diagnosing and ruling out autism at all levels. And in addition to diagnosing, I follow children often from toddlerhood all the way through adulthood. And I work with the child who becomes a teen, who becomes an adult, and the family. And today I bring that experience and all those perspectives to today's topic. The other disclaimer I feel I should offer is related to our topic today. There's discussion about how the language to use to describe individuals with autism or autism spectrum disorder that has also gotten more complicated and we'll delve into. We speak about person-first language for decades, namely the child is a child first, and so a child with autism or autism spectrum disorder has been the common way to refer to children with autism. The neurodiversity movement is advocating, and many members of it have expressed a preference for identity-first language, meaning that autism is a large part of their identity and they prefer to be referred to as autistic individual. So we'll talk about that theme a little bit more. My natural tendency is to use person-first language. But again, this is an evolving set of topics. Okay. What I hope to cover today, and I'm going to ask, can you please give me a warning if I somehow manage to go to 11:30 and not stopped? Okay. We're going to talk about the changing definition of autism over time and why that's relevant to this topic. The changing demographics of autism over time and why that's related to this topic. How do we integrate the diverse needs of the population of individuals with autism spectrum disorder into advocacy efforts that represent a wide spectrum and give all parties a voice? That's our motivation for this discussion. We'll cover the medical and societal models of disability. What is the neurodiversity model? Where did it come from? The emergence of profound autism as a diagnosis and controversies arising from this dialogue. Okay, and I don't want it to be lost on us that it's still April, and April is National Autism Awareness Month. And I prefer a different name for this month. I didn't come up with this, but to me, this captures what I think all of us involved in the autism community seek. When I hear the word awareness, that's okay, I've heard of autism. And I would say autism has been a household word for 20 years now. Acceptance captures the idea of I've heard of it and I accept mentally that this is a condition that may apply to me or my child. And we want the rest of the world to understand what autism is. And then the third word I want to insert here is the action word. So awareness, acceptance, and the act of inclusion is what we seek for and celebrate during Autism Month. Which, why should it just be a month? Why shouldn't it be all year long? But awareness, acceptance, and inclusion of autism is what we seek. Okay, so show of hands of our in-person audience. Who has watched some of the portrayals of autism on TV? Love on the Spectrum? The Good Doctor? Atypical? The Big Bang Theory did not mention autism by name, but anybody who knows autism knew that Sheldon has autism and his nerdy friends do not. Okay, so we're a sample of individuals watching portrayals of autism on TV. They're commonplace now. They weren't always. Those portrayals tend to depict individuals who are high functioning, verbal, cognitively intact, even gifted. Sheldon's gifted. They are quirky. They are lovable. That's the portrayal. And those portrayals have unintentionally contributed to, when people in the world at large hear the word autism, they picture those characters, that level of functioning, which is the public sees autism as quirky, verbal, smart individuals. It's not, those portrayals are not outlined and providing examples of what we know to be a tremendously wide spectrum of functioning. And so it's getting to be fewer and fewer families that have not been touched by autism. The most recent prevalence numbers are 1 out of 36. But when those images are what are seen repeatedly on TV, that becomes what people think of when they hear the word autism. And then it often falls on the laps of families and providers who are more familiar with the wide range of autism to kind of fill in those blanks and define the spectrum, which is as wide as everybody says. And I want to relate 2 recent phone calls I received. Now, I guess they're a number of months ago in the fall. I received 2 phone calls in the same week that really drove home the spectrum to me, and I think are good examples to start off our discussion today. So I picked up the phone, I heard a familiar voice, and I heard a mom say, "I don't know if you remember us. You diagnosed our son when he was under 2 years of age. We saw you in a follow-up study of children with an early autism diagnosis through the age of 9. And I wanted to let you know he started college this year and is studying engineering. And so far, so good. And we've thought of you every new school year and wanted to share this big accomplishment." Okay. A couple days later, I got another phone call. Also, I recognized the mother's voice on the phone immediately. She said, "Dr. Schulman, we moved right before the pandemic, and we haven't seen you in a few years, but I wanted to give you an update about my son. He's in a group home. He's helping out with all the routines of the day and the household. He is in a supervised, supported work situation. There's been no behavioral outbursts or unpredictability. He's really bought in and is a member of this community, things we never would have thought possible for this nonverbal boy." These are 2 success stories of autism. They are very different, and there's everything in between. So we're going to be, in many ways, dealing with the extremes because they're kind of like the bookends to define a spectrum. And gradually over time, that helps us make the case of everything in between. Okay, so wish me luck with these videos because we were having various challenges, but I'm going to. So for those of you who have not been watching Love on the Spectrum, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I want to present 2 pictures of what we were talking about as the bookends. Love on the Spectrum is a show portraying the supports that are provided to a high functioning autism population as they go through the dating pool in an effort to meet a soulmate. Okay, so this is one of the characters, I think his name is Michael, at his family dinner table. no. Is there something we can try to do? I don't understand. Was this my video? Is this my version or the version? Okay. And is there something we can do to try to get the video? I knew we had problems with the other video, but usually when I see that arrow, it does it. I mean, maybe that will do anything about him. Yeah,
A lot of people our age
Yeah.
aren't interested in commitment. They're only interested in intercourse.
Finding love can be hard for anyone.
Do you feel anything about me?
Some girls don't feel like dating someone with disabilities.
It's too awkward.
Even though I'm on the spectrum, I'm capable of falling in love.
Well, I hope we can help you achieve that.
Really hope so too. I seriously do.
This series follows young adults on the autism spectrum.
Hello there. It's very The Bachelor.
Because it's entirely scripted.
That's my script.
Let's see. No.
As they navigate the confusing world of relationships and dating.
Shall we pay for ours separately or something?
What is your disability? Because I'm not seeing one.
What does autism look like to you?
Point taken.
I just knew I was different. Sinead just felt similar to me.
I love it.
I want to be in love.
okay. So I think you got a sense of the population being profiled. All those individuals identify with autism, have a diagnosis of autism. Okay, now we're going to go to the other video. Again, we're looking at extremes. This one, I think we hopefully solved. Found autism PowerPoint, or we're going to go to the other Facebook video. Yep. Okay. A parent chose to put up this video, a set of pictures to capture profound autism. Again, those are our bookends for today's discussion. Okay, now we're going to go back. Okay. Okay. So it really boils down to, this quote is used in almost every talk on autism I ever hear. I want to attribute it, as we should, to Dr. Stephen Shore, an autism advocate who is on the autism spectrum and says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. No two are the same. Each needs to be looked at as an individual. And the word autism is as applicable for the highly independent individuals we saw in the first video of Love on the Spectrum who are going on dates on their own, as it is for people who may require lifelong support due to profound delays, being nonverbal, and really utterly dependent, as in the video of the young man. So it does tend to make it difficult to use this one word to describe that spectrum. Say it again. Okay, so basically we're kind of getting at, well, how should we, what words should we use to discuss and capture individual needs? So I want to start with our current definition in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 of autism. Okay, so the years keep passing and this slide is still true. Autism is a behavioral diagnosis. There is no blood test, no MRI, no EEG. The behaviors are observed, recognized as meeting criteria. The names of the condition and criteria have changed over time. And the current criteria are now about 10 or 12 years old, laid out in the DSM-5. And they represented a big change from the prior version, or the DSM-4. So the DSM-4, and it's getting further and further away, but we continue to find ourselves kind of, well, autism used to represent the most severe version of autism, children and adults who captured 8 of the criteria that were required. Asperger's was a subset of individuals with autism with normal cognition, normal language, a lot more along the lines of what we saw in the Love on the Spectrum version. PDD-NOS were a mishmash of mild cases, wasn't positive they were autism, and it was because of kind of that category became just giant and full of children who might or might not have autism. And so it was due to that lack of clarity that the next version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 became more specific in certain regards, that certain criteria had to be met. But it had a hard time capturing this idea of the spectrum of severity, and we're going to go through its model. Many people continue to utilize the term Asperger's disorder to refer to individuals, an Asperger phenotype of autism spectrum disorder, to capture that normal cognition, normal language skills. Okay. There are basically, autism is a social problem, a problem with social interaction. If there is no problem with social interaction, we look elsewhere to understand what is going on. And social communication is how social interest and motivation are displayed. The 3 required social communication features are deficits in social emotional reciprocity, the give and take of social interest, conversation, going back and forth as a young child, sharing, smiling. The next is deficits in nonverbal communication. This is where things like decreased eye contact, unusual body language, lack of understanding of other people's facial expressions and body language comes in, decreased use of gestures. And then for any diagnosis, the key is, what is the functional impairment? Meaning, how is this impacting the individual's life? So this criteria captures that these difficulties above, we're not putting people under a microscope and saying, oh yeah, they're a little like this or a little like that. It needs to impact their functioning in terms of making and keeping friends, understanding the rules surrounding that. And in younger children, before there is a concept of friends, how they interact with parents and family members. And often in very young children, that's portrayed through difficulty having play, back and forth, imaginative play. Then there are the restricted and repetitive behavior interests, and 2 out of 4 are required for the diagnosis. Repetitive speech, repeating favorite portions of movies, being echolalic of what other people say, or movements, hand flapping or other movements, both fulfill that criteria. Being rigid and very routine driven to the point that it impacts functioning. Having very particular interests or attachment to unusual objects, really being interested in something so that you know before the person starts to speak what they're likely to speak about. When they approach with young children, every time a parent described that fixated interest as, he checks everything for spinability. Whether it can be spinned or not, I know if he sees something, he will try to spin it. And then for the first time ever, the increased or decreased sensitivity to sensory stimuli. Okay, the ways that the DSM-5 attempts to lay out this very full spectrum, given that everybody has to meet those criteria, is through the specifiers. So the question is, for this individual who meets the criteria of autism, is it with or without intellectual disability or developmental delay? Is it with or without language impairment? And each has to be delineated. Is it associated with a known medical or genetic condition? That was a very big one, because we used to get children referred with known brain abnormalities, and behaviorally they met the criteria of autism, and the parent would say, what do you mean he has autism? He's missing the corpus callosum of his brain. That's why I'm here. Well, he meets criteria for autism. That is the medical problem, the explanation, but this is a behavioral problem that outlines what the therapeutic needs are. And then the mental health behavioral diagnoses, and then the severity. And the severity that used to be captured by autistic disorder or Asperger's, or was captured more casually with terms like high functioning individual with autism, low functioning individual with autism, has become people describing support level. So I'll more and more days I'll have a parent say, well, my child's support level 1. I'll look at parent bulletin boards and, well, this is for my child with support level 3. And so I want to go through each of these specifiers so that we're all speaking the same language. Okay, let's talk about autism and intellectual disability or developmental delay. Traditionally, there has been about half of the population of individuals with autism also have significant developmental delay. And as they get older, usually by 7 years of age, may warrant a diagnosis of intellectual disability of one. There are various levels: mild, moderate, severe, profound. That percentage who are meeting criteria for intellectual disability is going down as more mild individuals, like portrayed in our first video of Love on the Spectrum, are included in the spectrum. So that percentage with intellectual disability, significant developmental delay is going down as the prevalence of autism is going up. It's, again, likely due to the inclusion of more mild autism due to the portrayals and the kind of common sense of the public at large that mild autism exists and what it looks like is quirky and lovable, but having these qualities. It's also the case that the standardized instruments that are utilized to diagnose autism defined in a very standardized, clear way what mild autism was. Before the ADOS, that was a fuzzy line that might have fallen under PDD-NOS, but the ADOS clearly defines it based on the modules. Is support and education, interventions leading to better outcomes regarding the developmental delay and intellectual disabilities? That's possible. Okay. In terms of communication skills, when you look at the whole population of autism, about 20% of individuals with autism remain nonverbal or minimally verbal through adulthood. So that's a fifth of the population. Okay. In terms of the kind of medical piece, what underlying genetic, neurologic problem may be contributing to this? So our understanding of autism and what has caused it is definitely increasing. At this point, it is very clearly problems that are located in the brain cause autism. That's a change from, if you look at in the 50s, no, being a cold parent does not cause autism. Okay, it is or in the brain, and there are many things that impact the brain and can cause autism. Things like having a birth trauma because you were born very prematurely, had a lack of oxygen, having brain abnormalities like the child who's missing a portion of the brain, having a severe early infection, having metabolic problems like low thyroid, PKU, other missing enzymes needed to digest food, and genetic mutation. So at this point, we generally can identify a cause for the autism at 20%. Sometimes that cause precedes the diagnosis of autism. So we know that the child has a problem with a part of the brain, and as we follow that child, we see the child meets the criteria of autism. Sometimes we diagnose the child with autism, and in the process of working that child up, the medical evaluation as part of autism highlights it's due to a genetic condition. There are risk factors. The prevalence rates continue to show that boys are 4 times more likely to have a diagnosis of autism. So being a boy is a risk factor. Being born prematurely, having a large head or a small head, having significant delays being recognized is a risk factor for autism. Losing skills at any point, children should never take steps backward in their development. And so when there is a report, observation, history that a child has lost some skills they had attained, that's a concern. Seizure, severe seizure disorder is a risk factor for autism. Okay. And there are possible environmental contributors over time that are being explored. Okay, and then when it comes to the kind of specifier of co-occurring mental or behavioral health diagnoses, you have certain diagnoses that are more common in the individuals who are support level 1 or have normal cognition and a lot of language. Those are anxiety, depression. You need to have the verbal skills to speak to those. Otherwise, we see behaviors and are left saying, could this behavior represent anxiety? Could this be due to depression? ADHD is present across the spectrum in terms of severity. This idea that if an individual is non or minimally verbal or doesn't possess an understanding of the vocabulary to express how they feel and what they're experiencing, that will often manifest as behaviors. Dysregulated behaviors is a way to capture this behavior is a communication. What is it communicating? Aggression is often, no, that's not fair. Self-injury is often frustration, anxiety. Elopement and wandering or bolting can be due to any range of overwhelm due to a noisy place, a crowded place, or a demand being placed. Okay, so the support needs issue. So support level 1, not very descriptive, requires support. Some support. Okay, that might be an individual with normal cognition, full language, who in order to be successful in a mainstream school needs support in learning social skills, interpreting other people's social overtures, listening to the teacher, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate behavior, things that can be provided, taught. I'm an intervener at heart. Everything in my mind can be taught, but the kind of issues and specific examples would vary with the level of support need. Requiring substantial support in a child often means in a special class that is smaller, more supportive, going at a slower rate, tailing the presentation of materials to where that child is, how to help them pay attention to language, how to help them deal with their rigidities or their need for structure. You get to a level 3, we're talking about an individual who is at risk of eloping or wandering, really needs one-on-one support at all times. And again, those are 3 bookmarks in what is a much wider set of individualized needs. So the spectrum of impairment, or ways of capturing where on this wide spectrum somebody falls. There are many ways. So social impairment. There are young children, school-age children, adults. The boy with the profound autism, James, I think was his name, who might show really a complete lack of social awareness. And then there are individuals who might have social interest, but need help to express it. And then there are individuals who have a lot of social interest, like the individuals in Love on the Spectrum, but may need guidance and coaching in social know-how. So you could look at it as kind of the spectrum of social impairment. You could look at it as the spectrum of communication, from no language or communication to repeating favorite scenes from the movie Cars. And the parent knows, oh, when he brings this up, it means he wants this. When it brings this up, he wants to go to the park. And then there's normal language and the ability to speak in sentences and paragraphs and write, but maybe perhaps with weaknesses in using that language to have a conversation or pragmatic language. Then there are the atypical interests. Even on the Love on the Spectrum, there's a couple of the characters who just have such intense interests in dinosaurs. There's one guy that it just overwhelms everything. And even though he has many strengths, that's all he wants to do and talk about, which, as you can imagine, can get in the way socially. But there are other children who want to always talk about subways, always want to spin everything, as we say. Cognition. So we've been talking about, you could go from being very, very delayed to being functioning in the above all average range to being gifted or having splinter skills in certain things that are a tremendous strength in the setting of significant weakness. Adaptive skills refer to what a person can do for themselves, like daily living skills, but it's also a phrase that captures judgment, awareness of danger. And so often one of the hallmarks of autism no matter the intellectual level, is that there's some weaknesses in judgment. I'll give as an example that a patient of mine, a different patient of mine who's going to college, mom was not giving him pocket money for snacks. And he would get to college and he was hungry and he wanted to buy snacks. And he saw somebody begging for money on the subway. And so he said, oh, I want money for snacks. I'm going to beg for money on the subway. This is a young man going to college. Intellectually, he can go to college, but his judgment that that is appropriate thing to do was a weakness that he needed to be taught. And then there are the emotional behavioral features, which, as we say, can be very significant issues that may look different across the entire spectrum. That's a complicated slide, but it's an important set of concepts. That spectrum refers to all these different dimensions. Okay, now let's go to the neurodiversity. I'm going to end up getting to 11:30 without being done. Okay, let's talk about the neurodiversity movement. So make sure to get to the topic of profound autism. All right. So the neurodiversity movement emerged in the 90s, even though we're hearing about it a lot now. It's been around for a while. And its aim was increase acceptance and inclusion of all people while embracing differences. Okay, so we started out, April is autism, acceptance, awareness, and inclusion. That was pretty much the whole mission of the neurodiversity movement. The premise was that traits and characteristics that medical science views as abnormal, the medical model of disability, namely somebody has impairments in their physical state, was what was the big topic of discussion at that point. It was viewed as a medical problem. And instead, the movement makes the case that this should be viewed as the human existence is wide, and there is a wide range of normal. And so I actually think it's helpful to say how this applied to cerebral palsy or a physical problem as an example. So in cerebral palsy, often arising in the setting of an infant stroke or being born very prematurely, there might be tightness or spasticity. There could be weaknesses, difference in the use of the two sides of the body, and the medical model will outline these are the impairments the individual has. They have spasticity, increased reflexes, they are weak, they are this and that. Okay. And that's the medical model. The individual has these impairments that get in the way of their functioning in society. The societal model says, whatever, this person is reliant on a wheelchair. We as a society have put up physical barriers to this person's participation because there's no ramps to get into the building. Let's focus on what are the obstacles to participation in society? Lack of a ramp, can't enter the building, and address those. Who cares about the spasticity, the reflexes? That's medical. We're talking about societal. And put up a ramp, and now this person with cerebral palsy can be in the room and participate. Okay, now this is being applied in the context of autism. And the idea is that there are attitudinal barriers that society offers. There's a wide range of human existence, cognitively, language-wise, behaviorally, socially. But now we're talking about attitudes that get in the way of the functioning and inclusion of individuals with autism, in the sense that people may have preconceived notions that people with autism can't work, can't live independently, shouldn't have children, are dangerous. Those attitudes that are barriers should be addressed through education individuals who have these needs should be offered accommodations to help them function in the various settings where they find themselves. And so that is the basis of the societal model of disability. And so self-advocates, like the individuals in the Love on the Spectrum segment, are often the voices of this movement. If you think about it, they will be individuals who are verbal, often have normal range cognition, have the ability to engage in this type of reasoning and make a case, are old enough to understand I have autism and accept and identify with that and embrace that. We are not talking about infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and the parent ends up being the voice for children and for individuals who often, like we said, 20% of individuals with autism will not be able to communicate that verbally because they lack language and communication skills. So this is, the neurodiversity movement is often the voice of self-advocates who identify as having autism, expressing their needs and their preferences. And they are a part of the spectrum. And the question becomes, well, they're not the whole spectrum. Okay, so here are, and I've chosen to put these things in quotes because these are, so I have done a deep dive for this talk and topic into what do parents of individuals who don't have a voice because they are nonverbal or have significant intellectual disability and autism, what's their response to autism isn't a disability. There's a wide range of normal. If you do the following things, we can participate and celebrate and be included. Okay, so again, these are quotes. Anyone who thinks autism isn't a disability should spend a day with my daughter. I was reading an online autism support group and someone wished they could have more autistic kids because autistic kids are so amazing. The post angered me. Imagine coming to the group as a parent of a child with significant autism in distress for parenting support and advice and having your experience completely dismissed. Severity, so again, this is a quote that I thought captured. Severity levels exist for a reason. The rare, narrow autistic experience that a mother would wish on her child is not the autism that I parent in Charlie every day. You know, the kids who grow up to be autistic adults needing 24-hour care, like James in the second video, supervision, someone to change their diapers at age 40. The children who never arrive at adulthood because they drown or got hit by a car having no sense of danger. They are not going to be in the dating pool. You have these two perspectives that seem unable to be synthesized, both valid and everything in between. Okay, so profound autism. We're finally getting to the topic for today. Okay, so Allison Singer is the parent of a 24-year-old daughter, maybe 25 now, with profound autism, who lives in a group home. And she is also the president of the Autism Science Foundation that has not been fraught with any sort of negative publicity. Its goal is what is evidence-based in autism. And she was part of a commission report in a peer-reviewed journal that is very respected called The Lancet that formally recognized the need for and endorsed the term profound autism for the first time. The commission suggested that profound autism should be used to describe people on the spectrum who are minimally verbal or nonverbal, are not able to advocate for themselves. The first age at which it makes sense to do this, given that children grow and develop and receive intervention and change, is at 8 years of age. In addition to being nonverbal, they should have significant cognitive delay as defined as an IQ less than 50, so in the range of intellectual disability. These are individuals who, like the young man in the second video, will grow into adults and continue to need support. They will not be living independently because of their significant needs. And the rationale was that profound autism will provide critical specificity to the extremely broad autism spectrum that goes much broader than the neurodiversity definition and the issues they advocate for. This will equip parents, service providers, and the public with the language necessary to ensure that individuals with autism without a voice receive the accommodations and interventions they need. And research panel, policy, and advocacy endeavors require both voices. So there's a really positive trend, and I'm not meaning to shed any negative light on it, to make sure that new clinical programs, policy, research endeavors involve self-advocates who identify and have that condition to speak to what is important. And so a lot of the activities I'm involved with have an autism self-advocate on there. But that's not, as we know, the full spectrum of points of view. And so this is advocating to say, when an individual with autism or without autism does not have communication ability, due to intellectual disability and communication difficulties, they still need and have a voice. How can we capture that? And so a parent or loved one's voice is one strategy for that. Certainly if the individual can communicate through augmentative communication or other means, that would be a way to get that voice in there. But the spectrum is broad, and a single voice on one end or the other does not capture that agenda. Okay. I'll be honest, when I heard the word profound in relation to autism, I thought that was a bit harsh or too much. And that's why I included these quotes, because there is profound intellectual disability. And honestly, the young man in the second video has profound intellectual disability. But like we said, there are all of these, severe, moderate, mild intellectual disability that will look very, very different. The rationale, and again in quotes, the term profound autism does not seek to demean individuals in this group or invalidate the experience of those not in it. Rather, it is meant to call attention to the unique needs of this vulnerable, underserved community comprised of people who are minimally verbal, nonverbal, and will require round-the-clock care throughout their lives. So it does not capture by me, it's not like, okay, there's profound autism and there's the neurodiversity population. No, again, those are the bookends, and there are many, many in between. And this term captures what's needed. Mainstream autism advocacy is increasingly focused on more independent individuals, like in Love on the Spectrum, which leaves people at the more profound end of the spectrum forgotten and misunderstood. Okay, other controversies that have kind of arisen out of these mindsets, just quickly, are ABA. So this actually, the conflicts over ABA are important ones that really do bring these needs completely into conflict. So ABA is an evidence-based treatment for autism. And the earlier it is instituted, and there's also a kind of intensity level, can have a very significant impact for a portion of the autism population. And is something that we consider almost a developmental emergency when we're seeing a certain profile of child. And the neurodiversity movement and its vocal members express that this intervention is focused on making autistic children appear normal. And there's a population that embraces their autism and wants it viewed as the wide range of normal. Don't change this child from who this child was meant to be. But ABA is a way to help a child learn things. We're not going to end up having time for a couple of the videos, but I have a couple of videos that show children who must have ABA. They are toddlers. We cannot get the toddler's attention through any means. They don't respond to name. They have no social interests. How do little children, toddlers, learn things? They are nosy and they imitate. So if a child is not socially nosy and doesn't imitate, as both the boys in the video are, then they won't learn things like communication and skills in a direction that will serve them and lead them to the highest likelihood of independence. And leaving this child without that ability to learn from their environment, they will not learn, or will learn in very, very unusual and atypical ways that will give them fewer choices and options in life. Who is to advocate for that child? This is not a matter of disowning who they are and their autism. This is increasing their function. This is often at a time at which the parent may not have fully embraced the autism diagnosis. The kid's 21 months old. They may not be in a position to advocate. And so I view this, you can see my bias coming through, I'm a very big proponent of ABA for certain populations with certain profiles, ages, clinical manifestations. And so this is a source of potential conflict. Another place where neurodiversity and the full spectrum's needs are in conflict are over medical workup of what has caused the autism. The movement, I'm still learning this. I started off by saying that. I am still learning this. I was in a recent conference with geneticists who identify as having autism. They are researchers in autism, and they are not in favor of genetic testing done on individuals with autism because, and I don't want to speak for them, and because often genetic information is used to look after a family does have one child with any sort of problem, to look and see if a future pregnancy is of a child who will also be affected. And then, given the family's particular preferences and beliefs, that pregnancy may be terminated. And so this is like, well, this information is not for me, or for the child with autism, it's for you. You would have terminated me. That is a piece of this. There's also the question of these days consent. Genetic information can go beyond where we intended. I counter that by saying one of the things we test for in genetic workup of autism is for kids with big heads. And that particular mutation, not all kids with autism and big heads, but in this P10 mutation, it predisposes the child to many different forms of cancer. And so when we have a positive, that allows us to be proactive and monitor this child's autism and deal with them at the earliest point so they do not become life-threatening. So there are medical indications for a workup in autism. And then the last thing is this identity-first autism and an autism individual as opposed to person. So more and more you will hear people from the neurodiversity movement identify themselves as, I'm autistic. And again, this is coming after decades of highlighting that people with developmental disabilities are people first. And most parents of children, want to highlight that and say, my child, who happens to have autism, and so again, these are conflicts, and I do not think that they can be resolved. There needs to be respect for both points of view. All right, we're kind of get into what okay. For the first time, the CDC released its updated prevalence rates. Now, like I had mentioned, autism is present in 2.8% or 1 out of 36 8-year-olds. And for the first time, I do want to highlight that there aren't the racial and ethnic disparities in 8-year-olds that were previously present and represented a lack of access to diagnosis. The case remains that about, okay, so for the first time, the CDC also published on statistics of profound autism. This term is accepted now in science and clinically. And they used the same definition we went through a profound autism. And the report found that in 8-year-olds with autism, 27% of them had profound autism. So a little more than a quarter of the population of individuals with autism meet this criteria for profound. And children with profound autism are more likely to have these medical complexities, to have self-injurious behavior. There are certain topics that are more relevant to this population, just like our advocacy tendencies were suggesting. So anyway, I think I'm kind of getting to what should be the end of the content, and the conclusions are that the definition of autism has changed over time, and that has led to a defining of mild social impairment and how milder social impairments can meet criteria for autism. And that's depicting a certain profile that is tending to be portrayed in the media and is becoming known to a wider group of the public who, again, autism awareness and acceptance, who are aware now of both, you know, how broad the spectrum is, but more in the direction of the mild. And so that population, that demographic of mild, verbal, normal cognition is increasing, and those needs are distinct from a population that has intellectual disability and is nonverbal or mild or impaired verbal ability. And so the wide spectrum of autism contributes to difficulty communicating and therefore meeting the diverse needs of individuals with this broad spectrum. And vastly different needs and perspectives have led to controversies between these groups related to evidence-based interventions, medical workup, and language. So profound autism is an attempt to address these differing needs that are not being spoken of in the context of the neurodiversity agenda, TV portrayals. And that's profound autism and where it is right now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schulman. So we are opening up the floor for questions. We will begin with the in-person questions, and then we will move to the questions on Zoom. So if anybody in the audience has a question, I ask that you please come up to the microphone and ask your question. Thank you.
Oh, hello, how you doing? I'm a Pam. I'm raising 2, especially adults. My daughter is 27 and my son 25. And she's considered nonverbal. Her thing is she gets emotional because she can't talk, so she gets frustrated. So when she gets frustrated, she likes to throw stuff or like make a sound. So I learned how to communicate. But my son, on the other, he's 25. He shows a lot of high function ability. And they both in the day program. So now I'm trying to plan for the future plan. Got anything happen to me, where they're going to go, which was residential. You know, I hate to say, but that was the last step in their life. But my son, he showed a lot of high function ability. He's into computers. He likes to cook and everything. So I'm dealing with 2 individual. So
You're,
You know, as a parent, you know, like I said, nobody never taught me none. I did everything on my own, ABA language, everything. So it's good to ask you a question. How you feel being as a parent? Because I'm still learning, even though they're older. You know,
you're living the spectrum.
yeah.
Good for you. And things have changed so much from when your children were very young.
To my grandniece, she's about probably 7, my nephew's daughter, and I found out she's autism. So this is my nephew's youngest child. So the way I feel as a parent, I think it's in my gene. I think I have ADHD because my son was diagnosed at 17. Because the thing my son do is a lot like me, but I'm too old to be tested. But I see the similarities. But like I said, it's something in my family gene. Like you talking about gene, but I already know it's in my family gene. It's a lot of learning disability going on that I see.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to say 2 things in response. First is what you're going through with your daughter and thinking through what her future is one of the main reasons they put forth about why profound autism should be defined, to make sure that there are adequate resources, adequate advocacy to address those needs. When legislators, people who are making decisions about how money should be apportioned, may hear the word autism and picture love on the spectrum and say, these are individuals who are getting married. And so making that term that applies to your daughter really clear, and a clear advocacy agenda is important and will be important in her lifetime. And then your son, you know, he's clearly not either of those necessarily if he's going to a day program. And so it highlights the need to fill in, got the bookends, everything in between. Okay. That's,
You know, he had it through the years, you know that guy they found missing, Rendo Kendall. I don't know if you heard about him. But my son displayed him a lot, and they thought that was my son that they found in the water. But I was trying to tell a lot of people.
oh my goodness.
A lot of autistic children, they see tunnel vision, the way they see straight like a tunnel. And the way they showed me, I already told my brother, I already knew where that guy was at. He was like running straight. What the school is that? You running straight. At the end, there was a water. So let me tell you what I think what happened to him. Like my son, the same thing my son. When I told him Panama Park, you know, the water's high and then it goes low, low, low. So once my son saw that, he turned around, he took a run. So I'm like, okay, what would just happen here? I know the water was high. They was going down, down, down. So I think that's what happened to the Kendall. The same thing with him. He probably was scared, like probably saw the end, because a lot of kids get scared. And like this, they trip, you know, their foot, because they get scared, like that. And I mean, that's I'm thinking that he probably could have found the water. That's what I'm saying, you know, a lot of they get scared, just the children, you know.
You know what, as we were saying before, that when an individual, for whatever reason, whether it's intellectual, verbal, or just a lack of ability to speak to emotions, has those obstacles, then their behavior tells us things. So running away, why is he running away? Why did your son turn around? He saw it was too deep, but the other person didn't. But that sort of judgment piece is a big need for many individuals with autism to assure safety. Yeah. Regarding the genetics, again, your life experience is very relevant to these sets of issues. And sure. And if it's yeah. I mean, if your family, if the parents of your niece with autism or you and your grown children wanted to be tested to understand what may have caused this, that exists. You don't have to. And again, this becomes 20% of the time, especially as there's more severity and more family members affected, it's more likely to be positive. Genetics has improved. So the answer to that question, when it is on your mind, can be offered if you raise it to your doctor or their doctor, or I can give you some resources. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have another question. Good morning, Dr. Shulman.
Good morning.
I
Almost
hope you
afternoon.
remember me. My name is Juan David Balines. Thank you for the opportunity to inviting me to be here. I was not expecting this at all. My daughter is Alexa. She's a patient. She was diagnosed by Rose F. Kennedy when you guys were in the Russo building. Alex is already 16.
Wow.
Alexa, she is in high school right now. Surprisingly enough, she managed to get into summer youth employment program last year. It was completely unexpected. She is considered nonverbal. I was reading through here in the last point when you said the CDC reports profound autism statistics. First and foremost, I really hate the expression autistic because that's what she has, not what she is. And I don't say when the expression comes to me, I'm asthmatic. And I say, I have asthma. I was born with that condition. But hey, people call it whatever they want to call it. I do respect my child. So when they say when Alexa has autism, and I said, listen, at this point in time, Alexa and me are perfect for each other. We understand each other. So at this point, again, Alexa and me are perfect for each other. I was very surprised in this little part just now. I wasn't going to ask anything. It said children with profound autism. It said the CDC reports profound autism statistics. In the fourth bullet point, that first line, it says children with profound autism, when compared to other children with ASD, were more likely to be female.
Okay, so yeah, that should. I worked carefully on that sentence for the exact reason I can't pull it up right now. The idea is boys are still more prominent, but whereas in the spectrum as a whole, there's 4 boys to every 1 girl diagnosed. When it comes to profound autism, nonverbal intellectual disability, you're looking more at a 1 to 3 number, meaning it's still more common in boys, but there are a group of girls. And the explanation historically for the more severe having closer parity between boys and girls has been that there are certain conditions that only affect girls. And so one of them is Rett syndrome.
Throughout the years, I love to read. I love to learn. I read a lot. So when coming to this conference, I went to all my bookmarks throughout, and I stumbled onto one of those. PDD-NOS, Asperger's, Rett syndrome, and I feel that Alexa might Alexa have Kanner's syndrome. It has never been publicized. I never heard of it before. Of course, I know a little bit more about that. I don't know if you heard about it. Kanner syndrome, Kanner apostrophe S.
So Leo Kanner was the person who originally described autism. And one of the, so I wasn't in the room, but the discussion about how to refer to the population of that we're talking about today, profound autism, did include, should we just call it Kanner's autism? Because that was the original description. And so when you hear the word syndrome, it usually means that it isn't a cause. it's a collection of things together. So I made a mistake in saying Rett syndrome because under DSM-4, I didn't have it on the slide, but Rett syndrome was girls whose heads don't grow. There's a set of things that would tell us that a girl had Rett syndrome. There was no blood test for it at that point. It was just, if you see these things, check, 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 they have this syndrome. Then genetic testing improves and improves. And these days, first, when I was in college, we would look under the electron microscope and count up how many chromosomes are there. You'd have to be missing a whole chromosome to have a genetic, or have an extra one. Down syndrome was always described because you had an extra chromosome. Genetic testing has gotten more and more sophisticated, and it could pick up larger mutations, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And now literally you can pick up a typo in the genetic code that says, if you have this typo, the protein that's formed by combining those amino acids won't work. Okay, so now we know exactly what causes Rett syndrome. And yeah, it's MECP2, it's a specific mutation. We shouldn't call it Rett syndrome anymore. We should call it Rett's disorder. And so when you hear syndrome, it's like an alarm. Okay, we probably don't yet know what causes it. Once you know what causes it, so things that are still syndromes are like fetal alcohol syndrome. No, we do not know exactly where alcohol. Autistic spectrum disorder at this point is often a syndrome in the sense that only in 20% of the cases do we know what causes it. When we can, but the genetics is improving. It used to be 2% of the time we knew what caused it. So I really appreciate your efforts to look through, and that's, to be honest, what we do every time we see a child, is to basically say things have changed since the past 6 months, a year, 4 years, 5 years since I saw this child, what new things might apply. So with your current line of questioning, come back for a revisit. Let's do some updated stuff.
Alexa is going back. She returned like a month or so ago to the road to see the developmental pediatrician. So she's seeing the doctor again. I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name. So she's going back, and we're seeing her in another month. Thank you.
Bring up that question, and it will be, of course.
And we do have another question from the audience in person, and then if nobody else on the floor has a question, we'll open up to Zoom.
Hi. Hello. Thank you, Dr. Lisa. My question is, so the term profound autism, is that going to be used in later evaluations for kids who have this type of symptoms? Will that allow them to have more services in the future?
That's really a good question, and I'm not sure I yet know the answer to that. I mean, our general approach has been to lay out all of those. So does the child meet criteria for autism spectrum disorder, with or without intellectual disability, with or without language impairment, with or, all of those things. Do we know the medical cause, with or the other one, with or without meeting criteria for emotional behavior, to lay out all of that, and also the support level need. And so we haven't embraced the term profound autism. And again, part of the reason I have discomfort with it is what I said before, is that I'm often seeing very young children, and the word profound just has a dead end feeling to me of this is the way it is. And my bigger agenda for the children I meet for the first 8-10 years is, okay, that intervention didn't work. Let's do this one. Let's try this. What is needed to kind of move things in the right direction at some point, though. So they're at 16, they're, as part of the IEP process, there is more of the life plan approach. And when you're involved in OPWDD, that happens even earlier. And I do think that there may be a role in certain venues and settings to highlight, when we know that that is the case, that this individual, at 16 years of age, or a nonverbal individual who tends to elope at age 12. And, I think it is important to have on the agenda in the discussion, this is an individual who is going to likely need supervision for their life. That's what profound is a takeaway message. I don't want to say that until that is clear. And then at some point, if that is the best way because it gets accepted widely to communicate that, then that would be a term that if a parent chose to use, I would totally support it if it was in line with what I saw clinically. So I can see its advocacy value, again, in meeting needs, in highlighting the breadth of the spectrum, but it doesn't feel clinical to me. And so, no, I'm not rushing to do that, although I'm going to always look at the scientific literature and see what is coming out about profound autism and how does it evolve. I think it's really new. I mean, I can't emphasize it enough that, it's a year old. And so I do want to see how, because I do think it will turn certain people off and away from pursuing certain things. And so one of my, whole missions has been increasing access, dealing with all the obstacles in the way of getting accurate diagnoses and supports. And when a diagnosis sounds scary, that's its own obstacle. And yet there are times when we drive home, if this child runs away because he doesn't have adequate supervision, that's on you, in systems that deal with that. So I see it as a role, but I feel like I need more traction to understand how it's going to go. And I do think it's a good way to frame, just like we did today, the discussion of, are we covering the full range of needs, or is your intervention, your plan, your research agenda, the clinical program you're putting together, just addressing a portion? And then, okay, let's go back to the table. What about the children and teens and adults who have these more significant needs that used to be called support level 3 and can still be called support level, but are profound? But I feel like that is a word for parents to use first.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Due to time constraints, we will just be taking the questions on Zoom now. If anybody in the audience has a question for Dr. Schulman, you'll be able to ask them after we finish the presentation today. So Dr. Schulman, we do have a few questions in the Q&A. Ms. Christine Rivera is stating, I noticed that the percentage for ASD is slightly higher for the Hispanic population. What are the social and cultural nuances to get the diagnosis and treatment for the different support levels?
So I'm picturing, I wish I could put up the slides again, but I'm picturing that this was in the recent CDC numbers that showed the percentage of 8-year-olds was higher. You know what? It's the first time ever that happened. I take it as a good sign. Whenever these prevalence numbers highlight that either in some location, the diagnosis is less common, or in some demographic, the diagnosis is less common, to me, it's they don't have access to the diagnostic resource. So I view this for what it is, which if it's repeated and is clearly, accurate, because this is based on 11 sites and they vary significantly, then I think that's a sign that there's been progress in access to diagnosis and fewer obstacles. It highlights, like, I practice in the Bronx, where we work with about a quarter of the families we see, especially of young children. Spanish is the language of exposure in the household. And parents need, especially of young children, need to be very involved in the therapeutic plan, not only in establishing it, implementing it, and prioritizing certain things, but because there are strategies and techniques that they may want to make their own and utilize at home. And the language barrier is a big one. It's very difficult to get services in Spanish. It is an additional obstacle. So that's certainly something that if there's a changing profile, but again, I view that percentage as not an alarming one, but an encouraging one of overall greater access to diagnosis. And it does highlight that every community needs to serve the individuals in that community. And there should be incentives for Spanish-speaking young people to go into these fields. There should be better pay so that they can make a living wage. These become advocacy issues, and the numbers support and make that case.
Dr. Schulman, and we do have another question from Miss Janina. She is asking, I want to ask how to know if your kid's doctor is the appropriate for your undiagnosed kid. Some doctors only see your kid as a number or as money. Is insurance important, and how can I help my kid get the proper health attention?
Is this specifically for a child with autism?
They mention undiagnosed.
Undiagnosed, but there's concern, I gather. There are, New York City is special in that early intervention is diagnostic for autism. That is not the case in the rest of the country. So if the child is under 3, the parent can voice that and achieve diagnostic testing beyond a concern. There are other hospital-based programs often that accept all forms of insurance and may have strategies for families who are without insurance. My own center, the Rose F. Kennedy Center at Montefiore, generally accepts, certainly Medicaid and all insurances, or most insurances, I should probably say. So other hospital-based systems also really try not to have insurance be an obstacle, and the idea that a parent can refer. It's not dependent on a physician referral. So it sometimes requires some legwork, and there are often waits, but it is worth, if mom has a concern, there are resources in early intervention and there are resources in hospital-based programs.
Thank you. And Miss Betsy comments, wonderful, thorough presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you. I'm an education advocate who works with many families whose children have autism. Could you imagine or believe to be feasible education integration with non-disabled peers of students with more severe and or profound types of autism? I know New York prefers the least restrictive instructional environment for students with disabilities, and it's always a scenario of compromise and devising an effective educational plan/placement.
Another excellent question. For children, teens with language and academic strengths and the ability to, the motivation and ability to learn with and from their peers, I'm a strong advocate for a least restrictive environment, especially if that's the parent's preference. In my deep dive of parental response of children with profound autism to that topic of mainstreaming, the most common thread was the least restrictive environment often did not support my child's needs. I have my own opinion on this, that rather, I think that if a child's needs vary tremendous, I'm sharing my own opinion, that if a child's needs vary significantly from the rest of the group, the class, such that the child is utterly dependent on one-on-one support, and that one-on-one support is basically managing the child's time for the 7 hours of the school day because those needs are so distinct, then that's the most restrictive environment ever. So one-on-one education by somebody who is often a paraprofessional and not a teacher. And I would rather see a child function independently and be expected to listen to the teacher and do tasks in a smaller class where they can be independent, even if that class is a class of 2 or a class of 6 or a class of 8, because that child will learn skills that they will not learn if they have a one-by-one by their side doing everything for them or with them. In most cases, I do think there's more to it, and we have to look at the individual child and how it's going, and the individual paraprofessional and the teacher. But we have a mindset of following a parent's preference, a parent's informed decision of the pros and the cons, and monitoring that and seeing how it's going. And if things are not going in a good direction, back to the advocacy table to basically say, well, this isn't working. What can we do? So it just highlights how individualized the plan needs to be for the child, and different things work for different kids and families.
Thank you. And just the last 2 questions on Zoom. Ms. Alma's asking, how can, as parents, provide social emotional support besides what the school provides?
So this is for the child, I'll assume. The verbal ability of the child impacts on one of the slides that I didn't have time for on the answer to that question. So there are mental health services and approaches, like the need for, as we know, in addition to the COVID pandemic, there's been a mental health pandemic, and anxiety is at an all-time high for children with autism and without autism. So our program and other programs developed a specific track for children, school age and teenage children with autism and anxiety. And it's a group intervention. So those sorts of specialty options in mental health systems or systems that work with children with developmental disabilities exist for the verbal child who can benefit from that model. When we're talking about children who are younger, who do not have the verbal or intellectual disability, then there are other strategies that often are more play-based, more based on the structure of the day in the school, and working more with the parent to make life as predictable as possible. And that would definitely be something for children with autism. Like we joke, school is generally a place where the academics are viewed as their responsibility. Like the IEP has academic goals, but when it comes to children with autism, we say, well, they're spending 7 hours a day there. This child not only needs academic goals, this child needs social goals. They need a social curriculum. And you know what? Their emotional and behavioral needs are impacting on their ability to access this environment. They need an emotional and behavioral curriculum. And so the idea is, what will work for this child, this unique child on the spectrum who has this set of strengths, this set of challenges, and this set of needs? How can we address it? So school can and does address that, and there's a parent role. And if there's ever a concern about safety, then medications may be something that can help quell or lessen some of the symptoms while other things are implemented.
Thank you, Dr. Schulman. And the last question through Zoom, a parent is commenting, any recommendations to vitamins and supplements? My son takes cod liver oil supplements. I'm thinking of giving multivitamins. Saffron is a new supplement that I've recently heard of.
I usually say I'm an evidence-based practitioner. So everything I say is based in the evidence. And when I offer advice that is my own opinion, I'll try to make a case as to why I've developed that opinion. Good health is important to everybody in their development and their general life. I don't know of evidence that suggests that those particular supplements would be specifically helpful in the setting of autism.
Dr. Schulman, and for such a wonderful presentation, very informative. At this time, I will be putting up a poll for our Zoom attendees. So please stay put. I'm also putting our contact information on the screen in case you have any questions and would like to reach out to us. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here, both in person and virtually on Zoom. Again, this presentation will be emailed in a follow-up email, and the recording will be available on our YouTube in the next few days. Thank you so much for being here today.